Grant's mother took the microphone at my engagement party, smiled like she was blessing me, and said, "Let's toast Mara. She may not be what Grant dreamed of, but at least she comes with a house." People laughed in that stiff, confused way. People laugh when they don't know if they're allowed to be offended yet. Grant kissed my cheek and whispered, "Just smile. She's old school." Then his best man stepped up right after her, lifted his glass, and finished what she started. "To Mara," he said, "the backup plan that finally worked." Grant didn't look shocked. He looked scared I'd react. And that's how I knew it wasn't a joke that went too far. It was a room full of people hearing the truth by accident. If you like stories where someone tries to play you in public and you flip the whole room into a witness stand, go ahead and like and subscribe now. And in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. Because what they planned to do after the toast wasn't romance. It was a takeover. My name is Mara. I'm 32 and I've rebuilt myself once already. I don't do chaos and I don't do prove you love me games. After my divorce, I built a small consulting business from nothing. I bought a house I could afford on my own. And I have a trust my grandmother set up, the kind that isn't flashy but is protected, structured, and hard to touch. Those weren't things I bragged about. They were just facts of my life. Facts Grant asked about early, softly, like curiosity. What's your mortgage like? Do you own outright? Is the trust complicated? Do you get distributions? Would you ever sell? At the time it sounded like planning. Now it sounds like someone mapping exits and locks. The first time I met his mother, Evelyn, she didn't ask how I was doing. She asked what I did, what I owned, and whether anything about it was messy. She called it being practical, like she was doing me a favor. Grant squeezed my hand under the table and gave me that look that meant, "Please don't make this a thing." Later in the car he said, "She worries. She'll love you once she knows you're serious." I should have heard the translation. Once she knows you're compliant. Because Grant never stopped her. He never defended me in the moment. He let it happen, then managed me afterward. "Ignore her," he'd say. "It's not worth it." I thought that was peace. It was training. The engagement party was Grant's idea. He said he wanted it classy. He wanted everyone together. Friends, co-workers, family. He wanted photos and speeches and the kind of public glow that makes people stop asking questions later. He promised he'd pay half, then his bonus got delayed, then he said he'd make it up on the honeymoon. So my card covered most of the deposits. My name went on the vendor contracts. At the time, that irritated me. Later, it saved me. The night started sweet enough. My friends hugged me. Danny teared up and whispered, "You deserve this." Grant looked handsome and confident, like a man who believed everything was going exactly to plan. Evelyn floated around the room like she owned it, touching my arm and shoulder with that possessive little gentleness women use when they want you to feel claimed. Then she asked for the microphone and the room went quiet in that polite way people get around someone who likes attention. Evelyn smiled. "I'm so proud of my son," she said. "Grant has always had such big dreams, such ambition." Then she looked right at me. "And Mara, you're a wonderful choice. A stable choice. A woman with roots. Choice. Stable. Roots, like I was a financial product." She laughed lightly and delivered the line. She came with a house. A few people laughed, unsure. One woman near the back grimaced. Evelyn kept smiling, like she'd said something adorable. Grant leaned in and whispered, "Just smile. She's old school." I smiled because I didn't want to ruin my own party. I didn't want to be called emotional. I didn't want to hand Evelyn a story she could repeat. Evelyn wasn't done. "Isn't that what every man wants?" she added. A woman already set up. No drama, no surprises. Her eyes flicked to Grant like they were sharing a private joke. My cheeks burned. Grant's hand tightened at my waist like a warning. Then Trevor took the microphone. Trevor was Grant's best friend from college, and he loved being the guy who kept it real. He lifted his glass. "To Grant," he said, "for finally doing what he should have done a long time ago." People clapped. Then he smiled wider. "And to Mara, the backup plan that finally worked." The air changed. Not awkward anymore, ugly. You could feel people recalculating what they were witnessing. Grant laughed too fast. He leaned toward Trevor and said through his smile, "All right, buddy, wrap it up." Trevor didn't. "I'm serious," he said. "He's locked in now." Locked in. Evelyn sipped her champagne, calm as a lake. Grant's hand on my waist turned from affectionate to controlling. He whispered, "Please don't do anything tonight." Not "I'm sorry." Not that was disrespectful. Don't do anything. Like my reaction was the threat. I looked at him and saw fear, not for me, but for him. And I decided I was going to find out what I was being locked into. The next humiliation hit 10 minutes later. Dinner seating. Name cards. Grant's family at the main table with us, of course. My friends pushed to a side section like an afterthought. Danny looked confused, then looked at me like, "Do you want me to say something?" Evelyn leaned in and said, "We thought family should be close. Your friends will have fun wherever they are." Grant didn't speak. He just pulled out my chair like he was being chivalrous. Before the first course even hit the table, Evelyn started what I can only describe as a guided tour of my own life. She pointed at the centerpiece and said, "We chose white because it photographs clean, just like the paperwork." Then she turned to Grant's aunt and added, "Mara's very organized. She likes things official." Like she'd already decided I'd sign whatever she slid in front of me. A waiter placed bread on the table and Evelyn leaned across me to ask Danny, "Loud enough for everyone. So you'll be moving out once they marry, right? Mara's place is really meant for a husband and wife." Danny's smile froze. I said, "Danny isn't moving anywhere." And Evelyn laughed like I was adorable for trying to have boundaries. Then she handed me a gift bag. Heavy, ribboned. It looked expensive. Everyone watched like it was a sweet mother-in-law moment. Inside wasn't jewelry. It was a leather folder embossed with our initials. Evelyn said, "It's your welcome packet. Family traditions." Grant squeezed my thigh under the table like, "Don't make this a thing." I opened the folder and saw printed pages titled Household Financial Overview and Joint Asset Roadmap, charts, boxes, signature lines. Evelyn said, "Just initial the bottom so we know you received it." Initial, not sign. Just initial, like it was harmless. The room watched. Grant's uncle leaned forward like he wanted to see if I'd comply. I smiled and said, "I'll look at it later." Evelyn's eyes hardened for half a second. Then she softened again, sweet as poison. "Of course," she said. "We just don't like surprises." And the way she said surprises made it clear she didn't mean life surprises. She meant resistance. A waiter poured champagne. Evelyn raised her glass again. "To the new Mrs.," she announced loudly. "We're so excited to have you join the family." Then she added, quieter but not quiet enough, and to have everything finally in the right hands. The right hands. My throat tightened. I kept smiling because I felt the trap tightening and I still didn't know where the teeth were. Across the room, I noticed a man I didn't recognize. Not staff, not family. A suit with clipboard energy. He wasn't eating. He was watching. Trevor spoke to him at the bar and nodded toward the hallway. The guy nodded back. My stomach turned. The suit didn't look at the food. He didn't look at the flowers. He looked at me, then at Grant, like he was waiting for a cue. When Grant caught my eyes, he gave me that calm smile that always made me question myself. Like, what? It's just a guy. Don't be dramatic. My chest tightened anyway. Then I noticed something else. Evelyn kept checking her phone, not casually, but like she was watching a countdown. Every few minutes, her thumb flicked, screen lit, face relaxed, then she'd glance at Grant. It looked like coordination, like timing. Grant leaned close and said, "After cake, Mom wants us to sign a couple things. Nothing big. Just so we can stop talking about it." Stop talking about it, like my consent was a nuisance. I nodded like I agreed, because I wasn't going to fight blind. I excused myself, smiled at the table, and walked away like I just needed a quiet minute. In the hallway I passed Sloan, the venue coordinator. She asked, "Everything okay?" I said, "Perfect," because I didn't want to sound dramatic. I slipped into a small business lounge the venue offered for clients. A desk, a printer, a charging station. Quiet. The door clicked shut behind me. I opened my email and searched prenup because I suddenly remembered Grant saying, "A week earlier, Mom wants us protected. It's standard." I'd said I'd read it later. I hadn't. A file popped up, prenup draft, sent 5 days ago. From Evelyn. Not a law firm. Not a lawyer. Evelyn. Subject line, "So excited to make it official." I opened it and my stomach dropped. My assets were listed like inventory. My house. My business. My trust. And there it was, clean as daylight. Within 90 days of marriage, Grant would be added to the deed of my home. Not after contribution. Not after time. Within 90 days. I scrolled and found a second attachment, notary confirmation. Date, tonight. Time, after cake. Location, private lounge at the venue. My name on the appointment. I hadn't booked a notary. I hadn't agreed to sign anything tonight. I stared at those words until they stopped looking like English. Then, I did the one thing I told myself not to do. I checked my mortgage portal app, just to reassure my brain that nothing else was happening. A red notification popped up, new inquiry submitted. I tapped it, and my breath caught. It was a request for a home equity line of credit, submitted today, using my email, my phone number, my address, and a secondary contact listed, Grant. My skin went cold. This wasn't a 90-day plan. It was happening right now. Then my credit monitoring app flashed a second alert. Hard inquiry detected. I felt my throat tighten. They'd already started moving money without my signature. The story shifted right there in that quiet room, from humiliation to crime. And for the first time, I had the urge to throw up. At the time, I honestly thought the toast was the worst thing that would happen that night. I thought it was just cruelty dressed up as humor. I was wrong, because once money gets involved, people don't stop at words. They start signing for you. And real quick, if you've ever had someone try to rewrite you as unstable the second you say no, hit like and tell me in the comments. I read them. I'm not the only woman this happened to, and the way they tried to weaponize that word against me still makes my skin crawl. I breathed in through my nose, out through my mouth, slow. Facts, screenshots. I captured the prenup clause, the notary confirmation, the HELOC inquiry, the credit alert. I didn't call anyone yet, not because I was calm, because I needed them to keep believing I was compliant long enough to walk themselves into a room full of witnesses. When I walked back into the ballroom, Grant smiled at me like he'd been waiting for confirmation that I was still manageable. "You okay?" he asked. "Great," I said. He exhaled. Evelyn approached with her sweet smile. "After cake, we'll step into the lounge for a moment," she said. "Just boring details." I nodded. "Sure." Grant squeezed my hand. "See," he whispered. "Easy." I walked straight to Trevor at the bar. His face was pale now, like he knew the joke didn't land the way he expected. "Trevor," I said softly, "talk to me." He glanced toward Grant like he wanted permission. I didn't wait. I turned and walked into the hallway. He followed, because he didn't have a choice. He started with the usual. "I'm sorry," he said. "It was dumb." I looked him in the eyes. "It wasn't dumb. It was comfortable. You said backup plan like you've said it before." Trevor swallowed. I leaned in. "Tell me the truth, or I'll ask Evelyn." And she'll tell me with a smile. That cracked him. "Grant talks," he whispered. "He shouldn't, but he does." "What does he say?" I asked. Trevor's voice dropped. "He says you're safe. He says you're the smart choice. He says you're the one who'll sign. The one who'll sign." My jaw tightened. "Who didn't?" I asked. Trevor flinched. "Olivia," he said. "His ex. The one his mom hates." I felt my stomach drop. "What did they try to get her to sign?" I asked. Trevor looked sick. "Same stuff," he whispered. "Deed language. Trust access." She refused. Evelyn told everyone she was unstable. Unstable. The same word Evelyn had already started to use about me. Trevor wiped his mouth with the back of his hand like he might be nauseous. Mara, I swear, I didn't know it was this bad. I stared at him. You knew enough, I said. You just didn't care until it got messy in public. His eyes filled. Then he pulled out his phone with shaking hands like he couldn't carry the guilt anymore. He opened his text thread with Grant and turned the screen toward me. Grant, don't screw this up tonight. Grant, Mom's got the notary in the lounge. Grant, she signs and we're locked. Grant, once I'm on the deed, she can't just get emotional and kick me out. My throat went tight. That last line wasn't a slip. It was the plan. I said, send me that. He forwarded screenshots. My phone buzzed. Receipts. I didn't thank him. I said, when people ask what happened, tell the truth. No spin. Trevor nodded, shaking. Then I walked back into the ballroom and put my smile back on, because I needed them to keep underestimating me. Cake arrived. Cameras flashed. Grant wrapped his arm around me like he owned me. I let him, because I wanted his fingerprints on this moment. Evelyn watched me like a hawk, satisfied. Then Sloane approached and asked quietly, "Are you ready?" Evelyn answered for me. "Yes," she said brightly. "We'll go to the lounge." Grant guided me down the hallway with a heavy hand on my back. The private lounge door opened. The notary sat at a desk with a folder and a stamp, and the clipboard man was there too, standing like he belonged. He smiled like he'd been waiting. Evelyn beamed. "This is Bryce," she said. "He's just helping keep everything organized." Bryce nodded at Grant like they'd met before. My stomach tightened. Bryce's suit was too sharp for a family friend. His watch was too polished, and the folder on the desk had a lender logo peeking out from under the notary pages. When I saw that logo, my stomach dropped again, because it matched the one on my mortgage portal. Same branding, same green icon. Grant tried to position himself behind me, close enough that his breath warmed my neck. He wasn't comforting me. He was anchoring me. Evelyn sat in the corner like a queen watching a contract get signed. Bryce stood to my right, close enough to see my hands. The notary sat in front of me, neutral and tired, like she'd done this 1,000 times and didn't care as long as nobody made it messy. Evelyn said, "We'll take your phone for a moment so it doesn't buzz. Just focus." She held out her hand like I was a child in a theater. Grant's eyes flicked to my phone. I felt the room tilt. That was the first time I realized they'd planned more than papers. They'd planned to cut off my access to the outside world. I smiled and said, "No." Simple. One syllable. Grant's jaw tightened. Evelyn's smile froze. Bryce's eyes narrowed. Grant said, "Too quietly, Mara. Don't." And the way he said don't wasn't concern. It was a threat. Grant whispered, "Babe, don't make this weird." I looked at Bryce. "Who are you?" I asked. His smile didn't move. "Family friend," he said. Evelyn cut in fast. "He works in financial planning," she said. "He's helped us with paperwork. Helped us. Not helped Grant. Us." The notary slid the folder toward me. Deed addition agreement. Consent to share financial information. Trust review authorization. 3 bites in 1 trap. Grant's shoulders loosened like he believed the hard part was over. Evelyn's eyes shone with hunger. Bryce watched me like a hawk. I picked up the pen, and all 3 of them relaxed. Then I set the pen down and said, calmly, "Before I sign anything, I want to see the home equity line of credit inquiry that was submitted today in my name." The room froze. Grant's head snapped toward me. Evelyn's smile cracked. Bryce's eyes flickered. "What?" Grant said, too loud. I kept my voice even. "My mortgage portal shows a HELOC inquiry submitted today, with you listed as secondary contact." Evelyn snapped. "That's not what this is." Bryce's smile returned, too smooth. "Sometimes systems auto-populate," he said. "Auto-populate my consent. Auto-populate Grant's name." I looked at the notary. "Did you submit a HELOC inquiry today?" I asked. She blinked, confused. "No," she said. I turned back to Bryce. "So you did," I said. Grant tried the soft tone, like a man performing for a camera. "Mara, you're stressed," he said. You're tired. You're reading into things. There was the rewrite. Evelyn added, sweet as poison, honey. We're worried about you. Worried. Unstable. Same playbook. I smiled, because my anger felt clean now. Then I said, I'm not signing anything. Grant's voice dropped, sharp. Yes, you are. Not a request, a command. The notary's face changed. Evelyn stepped closer, eyes hard. Don't embarrass us, she hissed. Grant reached for my wrist. Pressure, control. The notary stood up fast. Sir, she snapped, do not touch her. Bryce stepped forward, palms out. Let's breathe, he said. We're just trying to keep things organized. Organized. Like my life was their paperwork pile. I lifted my phone. I have texts where Grant told Trevor she signs and were locked. Grant lunged and grabbed my phone, trying to yank it out of my hand. My heart slammed. The notary barked, stop. And then Sloane's voice filled the doorway, loud. Sir. Behind her, 2 security guards stepped into view. Grant froze mid-yonk because now he wasn't in a family room. He was in a business venue with professionals and cameras. He let go like my phone burned him. I looked at him, calm as glass. Don't touch me again, I said. Evelyn hissed, this is why you were alone before. You overreact, you ruin. Sloane's eyes widened. The notary stared at Evelyn like she'd just shown her teeth. Bryce stepped back a fraction. I turned to the notary and said clearly, I am refusing to sign. Please document that I refused and that physical pressure was applied. The notary swallowed, then nodded. Okay, she said. Evelyn snapped. No, you will not. The notary's voice turned firm. Yes, I will. This doesn't feel voluntary. She gathered her folder. Bryce moved toward the door like he might block her, then stopped when one guard shifted. The notary walked out. The private trap broke apart in real time. Grant's face flushed. What are you doing? He hissed. You're ruining everything. I met his eyes. You plan to steal my house, I said. Evelyn's voice turned low and vicious. You're going to regret this. Bryce vanished out a side door like a ghost. Of course he did. I didn't argue in the hallway. I didn't cry. I walked back into the ballroom because I could already hear the spin forming behind me. Unstable, paranoid, emotional. I wasn't going to let them write my story. I was going to publish it to the room in real time. Sloane moved beside me. Do you want the microphone? She asked softly. I nodded. Grant rushed forward. Mara, please, he said breathless. Not here. I looked at him. You planned it here, I said. Then I faced the guests and kept my voice calm. I'm sorry to interrupt, I said into the mic. I need 1 minute. The room quieted fast. Phones rose. Evelyn froze. Grant forced a smile like he could charm his way out. I didn't give him the chance. Tonight, I said, I was introduced as a woman who came with a house. Then I was called a backup plan, and told my fiancé was locked in now. A ripple of shock moved through the room. Patrice, one of Grant's coworkers, stared at him like she was seeing him for the first time. After cake, I continued, I was brought into a private lounge where a notary was waiting with paperwork prepared in my name. The murmurs sharpened. I raised my hand slightly. I'm not doing a fight. I'm doing clarity. That paperwork included a deed edition agreement for my home, I said, and authorizations to access my financial information and my trust. Someone whispered, no way. Evelyn snapped, this is private. I turned my head. You made my house public, I said. Then I delivered the line that changed everything. While I was in that room, I said, I discovered a home equity line of credit inquiry had been submitted today in my name, with Grant listed as secondary contact. The room went quiet in the way it goes quiet when people realize it's not messy romance, it's fraud. I didn't just say it and walk away. I turned my phone outward and said, this is the inquiry on my mortgage portal. Time stamped today. Then I looked at Sloane and said, can you confirm Bryce is not venue staff? Sloane nodded and said, loud enough for the room, he is not. That made heads turn. People started scanning the room for him. Patrice stepped forward, voice sharp. Bryce, the guy in the lounge. What company is he with? Grant's mentor's eyes stayed on Grant, not on me. That's when I realized something. Men who live in compliance worlds don't react to drama. They react to process. They react to fraud. I said, I'm not asking anyone to take sides. I'm asking you to remember what you heard and what you saw, because they will try to tell you I'm unstable. Then I looked straight at Grant's mentor and added, if this happened to your daughter, would you call her paranoid? The room went dead quiet. Grant's mentor didn't answer out loud. He didn't have to. His face did it. He looked at Grant like he was disgusted. Grant swallowed hard, and that was the first time I saw him realize he'd misjudged the room. I handed Sloane my phone for 1 second and asked her to display the screenshots on the venue's screen system. The venue had a display wall used for corporate events. Sloane hesitated, then nodded. Within a minute, my screenshots were on the wall. HELOC inquiry. Secondary contact. Grant. Notary confirmation. Prenup clause about adding him to my deed. Big and undeniable. The sound the room made then wasn't gossip. It was outrage. Real outrage. Like watching someone try to pickpocket a woman at a dinner party. Grant tried to rush the screen and Sloane snapped. Security. 2 guards moved fast. Grant stopped. Hands up. Suddenly polite. Evelyn's face went paper white. She hadn't planned on a projector. Someone near the back said, "Call the police." Another person said, "This is insane." I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just stood there while the room did what rooms do when the truth is visible. It turns. Sloane asked quietly, "Do you want us to contact authorities?" I said yes. "And please preserve the footage, loud enough for witnesses." Grant's eyes flickered, because footage meant facts that couldn't be rewritten later. Within minutes, an off-duty officer who worked venue security stepped in. Not in a dramatic way. In that calm, procedural way that makes liars sweat. He asked, "Who's Bryce?" Grant didn't answer. Evelyn didn't answer, because Bryce was already gone. I said, Bryce was in the lounge with a lender logo and a notary folder. He introduced himself as a family friend. I have reason to believe he's connected to a fraudulent inquiry on my home. The officer nodded once, like he'd heard this story before. He asked Sloane for hallway footage. Sloane said, "We'll pull it." Grant snapped, "That's not true." I looked at him. "Then you won't mind when the lender pulls the records," I said. Grant went silent, because silence is what liars do when facts are named out loud. Grant tried the smear, loud and smooth. "You're watching a woman spiral," he said. "She's stressed. She's paranoid." I nodded once. "That," I said, "is exactly why I'm doing this in public. Because if I ended this privately, they'd tell you I was unstable." Evelyn smiled sweetly and repeated, "We're worried about you." I smiled back. "The notary refused to proceed because she said it didn't feel voluntary," I said, and venue security witnessed what happened. Sloane stood behind me, stiff and steady. The guard shifted near the door. Grant's eyes flickered, because he knew he'd lost control of the room. I lowered the mic. "I'm ending this engagement," I said. "Right now." I slid the ring off my finger, didn't throw it, and placed it on the cake table like evidence. Then I walked away while the room buzzed behind me like a hive. Grant followed into the hallway, red-faced. He grabbed my arm hard. "You're ruining my life," he snarled. I stared at him. "You were going to take my house," I said. He shook his head like I was the crazy one. "I was going to be your husband," he snapped. "Husbands have rights." "Not to steal," I said. Evelyn rushed up behind him and said loudly, "She needs help." I looked at her, calm. "You're proving my point," I said. One guard stepped between us. "Sir," he said to Grant, "let go." Grant released me instantly, humiliated. The guard asked, "Do you want them removed?" I said yes. Evelyn snapped, "You can't." Sloane's voice was polite and firm. "Ma'am, the event is under Mara's contract." Evelyn's mouth opened, then closed. They escorted them out. Grant tried to twist back like he wanted to yell, then stopped. He knew the cameras were real now. Outside, sitting in my car, my hands finally shook on the steering wheel. Not from heartbreak. From the reality that they'd been inside my life, quietly, like termites. I drove home and didn't collapse. I worked. I changed every password. Email first, banking second, mortgage portal, cloud storage, utilities. I froze my credit and set alerts on everything. I checked my email security page and saw a login from a device I didn't recognize, near Grant's office. I screenshotted it. Then I called my lawyer, Simone Kaplan. That was the first time I called her that night. Not before the humiliation, after I saw the crime. Simone answered on the second ring. I said, I have evidence. They scheduled a notary at the venue. I refused. The notary left and agreed to document it. And there's a HELOC inquiry in my name from today, plus an unauthorized login. Simone's voice went hard. Send everything, she said. Do not respond to them. Screenshot every contact. We lock your life down first, then we stop their spin. The next morning, police showed up at my door. A wellness check. 2 officers, calm, professional. We received a call expressing concern for your well-being, one said. My stomach dropped. They'd already moved to smear. They wanted a record that I was unstable. I kept my voice even. I'm safe, I said. This is retaliation. I ended an engagement after refusing to sign deed transfer paperwork. I have an attorney. I can provide documentation. I showed the older officer the notary confirmation email, the HELOC screenshots, the unauthorized login evidence. His tone shifted. We'll note this, he said. Notes are what end lies. Simone filed a cease and desist that day. No contact. No third-party contact. Preserve communications. Preserve devices. Any harassment becomes evidence. Grant didn't apologize. He escalated. Emails to my clients. Messages to my friends. Texts to Danny about my mental state. Danny forwarded them to Simone without replying. Then Grant tried the dirtiest squeeze. He filed for a restraining order against me, claiming I was harassing him. Simone read it and smiled without humor. This is control, she said. He's trying to make you the problem on record. 2 weeks later, we were in court. Grant showed up in a suit like he was the victim of a hysterical woman. Evelyn sat behind him, posture perfect. Grant's attorney talked about my public outburst and instability. Simone handed the judge a binder. Notary documentation. Venue statement. Security incident report. Wellness check record. HELOC inquiry screenshots. Unauthorized login screenshots. Trevor's texts. She signs and we're locked. The judge read silently, then looked at Grant. His face hardened. This petition is denied, he said. Grant's jaw clenched. The judge added, if you attempt to use this court to harass this woman again, we will consider sanctions. Evelyn's face went stiff. Grant looked like he'd swallowed glass. Outside the courtroom, Grant tried to approach me. Simone stepped between us. No, she said, you don't get access. That was when his control truly died. Because power for men like him isn't love, it's proximity. That night, I got a message request from Olivia, the first choice. I heard what happened, she wrote. Please don't believe Evelyn when she says you're unstable. She did it to me too. I have proof. I replied with one word, send. Olivia sent emails and drafts from Evelyn that matched my documents like a fingerprint. Same deed language. Same trust access. Same concern when she refused. Then she sent something that made me sit back in my chair. Evelyn had written Grant scripts, word-for-word lines. I love your stability. You make me feel safe. I want a future with you. Grant had said those exact lines to me. It wasn't romance. It was rehearsal. Simone said, this proves pattern and intent. We didn't post online. We didn't gossip. We sent facts to the places that mattered. Grant's employer had compliance standards. Simone sent documentation of attempted coercive transfer, unauthorized access indicators, and a pending lender fraud review. Grant was placed on leave, then terminated. Grant tried to spin the termination too. He told mutual friends it was political and temporary. Then a former coworker of his messaged me privately and said he wasn't terminated for a misunderstanding. He was terminated for dishonesty. That was the kind of quiet sentence that lands heavier than any insult, because it meant the mask didn't just slip with me, it slipped at work too. The lender's fraud department contacted Simone a week later. They confirmed the inquiry had been initiated using my information, but the IP address and device fingerprint didn't match my usual logins. I didn't need to understand the tech details to understand the point. Someone else had been inside my account. Simone told them to preserve everything and route communication through her. I felt something like relief, not because it was over, but because it was finally documented. Evelyn served on a charity board that lived on reputation. Simone sent the notary documentation and the court denial record. Evelyn was quietly removed. No announcement, no speech. Just erasure. The kind that makes a woman like Evelyn disappear from the circle she feeds on. Trevor called me one night, voice wrecked. I told the truth, he said. I said good. He hesitated. There's something else, he admitted. 2 days after Grant lost his job, Evelyn tried a different tactic. I got an email from a private address that wasn't linked to her usual accounts. It started sweet. Mara, I'm sorry things got emotional. Emotional, of course. Then it offered a solution. She wanted me to sign a statement saying the HELOC inquiry was a misunderstanding and that Grant never pressured me. In return, she'd make sure I wasn't bothered again. It was a bribe wrapped in a threat. I forwarded it to Simone without replying. Simone called and said, that email is gold. That's the extra dirty squeeze before they realize they're done. And she was right, because when a person offers you peace in exchange for your silence, it's not peace. It's leverage. Trevor told me Grant had a folder on his laptop called Mara. Spreadsheets, asset notes, a timeline, and a file titled Leverage. I copied it, Trevor whispered. I couldn't live with it. 2 days later, Simone received an anonymous package, screenshots, and one line that made my skin crawl. Make her feel chosen. Keep her grateful. Don't let her talk to her lawyer. He'd studied me like a manual. Simone said, this ends him. Not with drama, with records. Grant tried one last squeeze. He showed up at the end of my driveway with his hands up like he was harmless. Mara, he called softly, please, just talk to me. I stood on my porch with my phone recording. You sent police to my house, I said. He blinked. I was worried about you. I stared at him. You were worried about controlling the story, I said. His face tightened, and entitlement spilled out, bitter and honest. I needed security, he snapped. You have a house. You have a trust. You have stability. I'm not going to apologize for wanting that. There it was. Not love. A claim. I nodded once. You don't want stability, I said. You want ownership, he scoffed. You're selfish. I smiled. If I'm selfish, I said calmly, why did you submit a HELOC inquiry in my name? He stepped forward, eyes hot, and my neighbor's door opened across the street. A woman stepped out with her phone and said, back up. Grant froze and backed up. Witnesses. He stared at me with hate. This isn't over, he said. I smiled gently. It is for me, I said. Then he left. After that, I didn't give myself a long speech about healing. I fortified. I tightened trust protections. I put my home into a structure that made deed changes impossible without a specific legal process. I installed cameras. I made myself harder to access, because that's what you do after someone tries to steal your life. Months later, I saw Evelyn at a fundraiser. Not hosting, attending. Smaller than she used to look. She spotted me and froze. I walked past her without stopping. As I passed, she whispered, you didn't have to destroy us. I paused, turned my head slightly and said, you weren't destroyed. You were exposed. Then I walked away, and that was the real ending, not revenge. Finality, because the worst part wasn't being called a backup plan. The worst part was realizing they expected me to accept it. They expected me to smile through humiliation and sign my life away because a room was watching. They were wrong. My name is Mara, and this is what happened when I was pushed beyond restraint. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this story.